question all the time, right?
Mostly.
Yeah, mostly. Mostly. Which one weren't you the first question on?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't either. I think you were the first question on everybody.
Almost. Yeah, kind of the.
Would you put this on your YouTube channel?
Yeah. Yeah, I got my own. I did it for a long time.
Yeah.
When
What are the cons you go to?
this one and
You do Fanboy or MegaCon in Orlando?
no,
Chiller? No.
I don't go to Orlando. Mostly like
Did you do MetroCon a couple weeks ago or a week ago here?
not this year. I went to like
Yeah.
no 2 years ago because of the. Yeah, supposed to have last year, but they canceled because of the COVID stuff. Everything got destroyed. Not this year. Oh, he's coming.
Everybody, Judith is on her way. She'll be here in just a minute. Just running a few minutes late.
Like always. The second one come late. Third one leaves.
It says she's doing one at 3:10.
Oh my gosh.
She's doing one at 3:10.
And I didn't know that they
You ready for citizens next week?
Yes, we did not grab it. So I brought my top.
This week.
She's so gorgeous. She looks exactly like she did.
Right, 30 years ago.
Crazy. Like you, like I would, if I would see her girl, like, oh my god, that's her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stood in line for 8 hours.
I would go.
8 hours. Her and I walked around and brought food back.
Yeah, I would have been for the whole day. No.
And then she was late.
We have to stop meeting like this. People will talk.
Well, especially your husband.
I know. Hi, imagine seeing you here.
Yeah, I'm back. Like always.
All right, Kim Bay, are we ready? Let's go. All right, so we got some Turtles fans out here?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Well, let's give a big Tampa welcome to April, Judith Hoag.
Thank you for coming, because you never know. Like, you do a panel and it's a Sunday.
It is a slow
Sundays are always
Sunday.
crap. shoes. Like you don't know. Hi, everybody. I see
Welcome.
familiar faces. Hi.
Yeah,
Hi,
welcome.
hi, hi, hi.
Welcome to Tampa.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello. It's a real
Hi,
pleasure. It's
Let's
a real
bring it
pleasure to
down.
do this. I'm an old school Turtles fan. I was reading the comics. I'm dating myself here back when they came out in the early '80s. So right, and
couldn't possibly be
we're
older than me.
simpatico. We're about the
I
same.
love it. I love it. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Are you enjoying Tampa?
I'm enjoying Tampa. Today is flying by.
Yeah.
I was just saying that morning just flew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The weekend's flown by, I think.
The weekend has. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
Because, it's a crazy time on planet Earth.
No kidding.
Not everybody's willing to go out into large groups, so
Right.
yay for your
Yeah.
bravery.
Wasn't really sure how it was going to go.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah, but I think people miss people, right?
Oh my gosh.
You know?
The first Comic-Con that I did back was in South Carolina. I want to say it was in early March, something like that. Could have been February. I don't know. Time is, I can't even do time anymore. And it was really fun because it was like Christmas morning the whole weekend. Everybody was like, look, we're out and we can see each other and I remember people. And so it's been lovely. So hopefully that keeps going.
Yes, hopefully so. We're getting back. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about let's talk a little bit about your early career before the Turtles, right? How did you get into acting? Did you always want to do this? Is it something you just kind of stumbled into?
I always wanted to do this. I was that kid. Like I was born this way, and I was always a little freaky child. And actually, so when I was growing up, my grandfather, in his basement, had stacks of Playboys. And so when we would go visit them, of course, we all had to like look at the Playboys because
For the articles.
Yeah, but this is back, we're talking like 60s, 70s at this point. So it's a very different Playboy from back then.
It was. They had a lot of literary.
They had literary, yeah, well, I wasn't reading any of that, but I was looking at the pictures. Because I just love oh my gosh, they're dressed up like a bunny. And look at that outfit. And then they would do like tableaus of it's like, bunnies at Thanksgiving or bunnies at Easter or the Christmas bunnies or something. And I was like, oh, that's what I want to be when I grow up.
A Playboy bunny.
So, yes, and so my mom, I had told my mom and like my whole family thought it was so funny. And you're like, what's so funny about this? This is like a great job. And I'm little, I'm probably I remember way, way back. So I was probably about 4, something like that. And we were at some gathering and my mom called me in and said, Judith, tell everybody what you want to be when you grow up. And I was like, oh, I want to be a Playboy bunny. And they all laughed. And I was like, and it's that moment like when you're little and you realize oh, I think that's not something I'm supposed to be. So at the same time, I watched a lot of Carol Burnett and I Love Lucy and Mary Tyler Moore Show, so it's that time period. And I was like, well, I'm going to be like Carol Burnett. I'm going to be an actress. And I just, all right, if I can't be a Playboy bunny, I can be Carol Burnett. Yeah. And so and I just started doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your first big role?
My very first big role was on like a real job.
Yeah, like a real job, professional.
Was on a soap opera in New York, and I had just gotten there pretty much, and my agent, had this audition for me. And I was like, oh, I'm not doing soaps. I'm here to be a real serious actress. And so I went in and I met people and they wanted to test me for it. And I was like, no, I'm a serious actress. And then, so they moved on to the next person. And I have a really good friend who was like, hey, serious actress, so what are you doing now? Oh, are you waiting tables like a serious actress when you could have done an actual job? And I was like, oh. You're just kind of young and dumb and you need people who are wiser than you to kind of remind you. And so they wrote this, I guess I did well enough that they wrote a part for me. And I was part of the ABC literacy campaign. So they wrote this part of this Southern woman my name was Lottie Bates, and I was from Craigie Hope, Tennessee, which is actually a real place. And I learned how to read and write on television, or on, daytime television, and I was in prison when this was going on, and then I got out like a month later, and that night was at a ball with the richest people, and ended up marrying one of the richest men in town, because you can get those kind of opportunities on television.
Cinderella story. Right, interesting. So, so how did the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles gig come about? How did that happen?
Well, I was doing a movie called Cadillac Man with
yeah,
Robin Williams.
Right?
Yeah, and Tim Robbins and Fran Drescher, and the script came in, and my agent said, and there's this movie called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and he said, I think the two movies could probably work together, and I said, is it like a horror film, or what is it? And I had never heard, I didn't watch the cartoons, and I didn't have the comic books or anything, and I went in and I read, and I met Steve Barron, and I think by the time I got home, I was offered the part. And then it didn't work out because my other movie was shooting, and so for about a week I lost the part, and somebody else had it, and I'm sure they're very sad that they didn't end up getting it. But we made the movies work, and so for the first couple of weeks I would leave on Friday. We were shooting Cadillac Man in New York, and I would fly to Wilmington, North Carolina on the weekends, and Robin used to ask me, like, I loved him so much. He was such a wonderful human being. Like, he was a wonderful, wonderful human being. And he'd say, everybody wants to be in the movie, Judith. Where are you running off to so you're not in the movie? And of course it sees me. And I said, well, I'm working on another film. And he's like, oh, what are you working on? And I said, oh, God, like to say the title out loud was a little painful to me. Because I just thought, they're going to think it's like a funky horror film. And I said, I'm doing a movie called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And he was like, what? And I said, I'm doing a movie called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And he said, they're making a movie of that? And he had the very first comic book. And so he was thrilled. And I was like, this is cool, right? Right? It's cool? Okay. And so he kind of gave me my street cred. Like, so people were like, so what movie we're going to? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then he and his family flew down from San Francisco for the premiere. Cool. And he brought Marsha, and he brought the kids, and it was really sweet. And he just holds, to this day, a very special place in my heart. I learned a lot from him. Yeah, from him and Debbie Reynolds. They were two big teachers.
Oh, Debbie Reynolds,
yeah.
I was going to ask you about Robin Williams. That's what a great story. I didn't realize he was a fan. I didn't realize he was a comic fan. That's great.
He was. Well, Kevin Eastman was in San Francisco in a comic book store, and Robin was there, and there, two guys in the aisles, going through the things, and then he's like, I'm gonna just go up and talk to him, and introduce himself, and is like, hi, Miss Williams, I'm Kevin Eastman, I'm a big fan of yours. And he was like, Kevin Eastman? I'm a big fan of yours. And so it was a big bromance that happened.
I get it. As someone reading the comics in that era, I get it. Totally. That's very cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the film itself, at the time, it's interesting how your perspective on that, right? Because those that were fans at the time, it was a small fandom, and it was really popular, right? In the comic, what sort of made it interesting at the time was that it was, typical funny animals, right? Except it was written for an older audience, right?
Yeah.
And so it was that dichotomy that made it interesting and made it kind of a hit in the comics in the early 80s. When they did the animated series, then they decided to make it more for kids, right, at that point. But the film bridged that gap and went back to the comics in a lot of ways, and I think that's what made it so successful.
Yeah, Steve Barron, who was the director, had a really, a very specific idea, and John Fenner, who was the DP, they were both English, and they saw this as a dark
Right.
story. And actually, because I'm doing an action figure with NECA, which is one of the things that's been interesting for them is they're trying to recreate the textiles and the stuff. Like, they're using the film as reference material, and it's so dark
Right.
that I had to go into my archives and pick up stuff. But I think that it through Golden Harvest and New Line, even who New Line was the distribution company, and Golden Harvest, who made Bruce Lee movies in China. There was a collab between them, and then Henson and Steve Barron, and they did a screening right before the film opened, and it was executives in a screening room. So it's a little room, a little screen. They're not kids. They don't get the movie. They don't get and they watched it, and it did not go well.
Yeah.
And they left dejected and sad. And they thought, oh no, we've made a crappy movie. Because when you're making a film and you're really close to it, by this point Steve Barron wasn't, sadly, they fired him, and a big mistake. Their stories. And, but so the people who were producing at that point didn't have the heart of the movie and understand. I don't think Steve ever would have been worried, but these guys didn't have that kind of heart. And so they were, when the day the movie opened, they were driving around to LA seeing, they wanted to see, is anybody going to this film? And there were lines around the block, because you all showed up. And you all came, and you brought your family, and you brought your friends, and you came and saw it multiple times. And they were like, oh my God, we dodged a bullet. And I don't think they had any idea that it was going to be as beloved as it was, or certainly as it is now.
Just out of curiosity, do you know what was their thinking? Were they thinking, oh, this was supposed to be a kid's movie and we've made it too dark?
Yes.
That's what they thought?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that they were expecting a happy, sunny kids movie.
Right.
And what I love about it, and I think the reason that it translates, is that I think kids are complicated.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of dark. I think when you have very little power and say over your life and this incredible creative viewpoint. I mean, look at me. I wanted to be a Playboy bunny, and I got the message loud and clear that was not going to be cool. And so when you're very creative and you start getting the messages very young that your creativity is not welcome here, or it's not, what's wrong with you? Hey, whatever. You get some interesting kids, and wonderful kids, great creative kids, but that kind of dark quality. I mean, and you couldn't make a movie now where it was they're smoking cigarettes, and they're doing the things that they're doing. We're just not allowed anymore.
It's funny. There was Howard the Duck was kind of a similar sort of concept, right? It's right both in the comics and then film. Actually, did a panel with Leah Thompson one time, who played
I love Leah.
similar role as April, right? And in Howard the Duck, which. And unfortunately, that one didn't do as well as,
Yeah, but Leah's done okay.
Oh,
I mean, she
done
did that movie about that car.
Right, what was it?
And the guy.
Yeah, back to something.
Time, and Calvin Klein worked into it somehow.
Yeah, of course, I had to ask her Howard the Duck questions, but. But Ninja Turtles, it took off, right? It had this cult following, but that blew up, and it became much bigger than that. And I mean, it was really I wouldn't call it an independent film, but
it was.
It really kind of was, right?
Well, it was New Line Cinema, and it was at that time. It was the highest grossing independent film of all time, and it really put New Line on the map and independent films on the map.
Right.
And that's when, after that, you started seeing more independent features.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Was there talk of doing a sequel at that point? It kind of surprised me.
Yeah, no, I had
I
I had it in my contract. They had thought of a sequel, and I would have been part of it, but they fired me.
Oh,
So I was not part of it.
oh, what happened? Do you want to talk about that or not?
Oh, I don't mind
Okay.
talking about it.
Yeah.
Because clearly, if I was holding grudges, I wouldn't be here. But I don't do that. Holding grudges will give, I think it'll give you cancer.
Absolutely. I hold on to the bad energy.
Or goiters or ulcers or something. It'll mess you up. No, what happened was, so Golden Harvest is a Chinese film company, and they made Bruce Lee movies. And part of the way it works in China at that time, and I would assume possibly now, is you don't get health coverage and insurance when you're working on a film. You don't have those. We have unions in our, the Screen Actors Guild or the Stuntman's Union or whatever, that if you're injured on the set, you will, they will take care of you. They will take you to the hospital. They will see you through. And the way that it works in China is if you are injured, you are shown the door. And so on our film, they just put him back on a plane. So, and actually Ken Scott, who took over as the Raphael in the suit stuntman in the first movie and then became Raphael in the suit for the second and the third movie, he got that part because the stuntman got injured. He broke his nose. When he went into the garbage can, his nose got broke, and he got put on a plane. And I was like, are we cool with this? Like, we're just gonna do this?
Right.
Like, I didn't realize it was the culture, the film culture that I was in on that show. Strike one. Strike two was I had a conversation with one of the executive producers who wanted to cut out the story of Splinter and the Turtles and the mythology and the sort of the character building parts of it about how, channel your anger and the discipline that it takes and your family is everything and all of those messages. They wanted to start cutting it out of the film. And so I kind of went, I got a big mouth. I just do, I'm a little sister. And you have to, so I got into it with him and I said, this is the story. And he's like, kids don't care about that, that's the fluff. And they just want to see fighting. And I was like, I disagree with you. I think that this is really, and Steve Barrett, it wasn't my movie, it was Steve's movie, and he made sure that was in there, but they didn't like that. And then there were a couple things in shooting, because it was a low budget film, you cut corners. And so I was trying to make sure that when we came back that there were certain protections that I had, seeing how they were running things. And I think it's 3 strikes, you're a woman in Hollywood, and you're out. So that's why I was not invited back.
That's like,
That's how it is. That's life in showbiz.
but you did.
It'll never love you back.
But you did get to do a cameo in the 2016.
I
one,
did,
right?
which was
That's
really
kind
fun.
of
And yet again, it'll never love you back. No, it was, we had tried to, they wanted to put me in the first movie. Our schedules didn't work. They wrote something special for me in the second movie, and I had such fun. I really, people like to diss on the Michael Bay versions, and honestly, I haven't seen them, so I can't say. But I really liked Megan Fox, just as a person. I worked with her and Will Arnett, and it was so much fun. And I had a really surreal moment when we were shooting. We're in Times Square. Right across from where we're shooting is my agent's office, where I was 25 years before doing this movie. And it was like, I'm back, and the journey of like, you get fired off of a big film. It's a little devastating.
Yeah.
And all of the journey, and then here I was back in that place with this part that they wrote for me, and in the eternal, welcome to Hollywood, they cut it out of the film. Which had nothing, I've been in it long enough to know it has nothing to do with me, it had nothing to do with Megan, it had to do with whatever it was, the story they were telling, and it didn't fit into the narrative.
That sucks though. Damn.
It's,
But
Part of
it's
Hollywood, babe.
Yeah,
That's why it ain't for sissies.
Really not. Well, so going back to that period though, after Turtles, you did a lot of television work.
Tons.
You were on in almost every
Everything.
single show of the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you name it, X-Files, I mean, all of them. I mean,
Do you know,
so many.
I still have a letter from Vince Gilligan.
Oh, yeah.
Who he wrote the episode of the X-Files that I did, and they had to do some editing in it, and he wrote to say some of this stuff, again, you know, things get cut out. And he was like, I just want you to know when you see it, there's going to be some things missing. We loved you so much. And then I had dinners. Bryan Cranston is a friend of mine, and so when he was doing Breaking Bad, we had dinner one night, and Vince was there, and Vince was like, he said, I don't know if I should say it out loud. Anyway, he was like, we really were considering you for this Breaking Bad. But I was shooting something in South Africa. And we would have loved to have had a crack at that. I was like, oh, I would have loved to have had a crack at that. But Anna, who they got, who actually we look quite a bit alike, she was lovely.
Yeah.
She was lovely. And I would have been able to work with Bryan.
Yeah,
And Vince is just a great guy and a wonderful writer.
So you worked on every show during that period, but Breaking Bad.
But Breaking Bad, yes.
I mean, so what were some of your, we can talk about Big Love, you had a recurring role in that.
Oh, I had so much fun.
But other than that, like through the 90s and those early 2000s where you were doing all these different roles and all these different shows,
Yeah.
what were some of your favorite ones? Because you really did, like, do the whole
Oh
gamut.
gosh,
through that
I don't
period.
know. I had so much fun. I kind of love whatever it is that I'm working on. It was really fun doing X-Files. It was, it's so funny.
You did
I
Briscoe
don't
County
know.
Jr. too.
I did Briscoe
Everyone
County
forgets that
Jr.
you
with
hosted that
Bruce
show.
Campbell.
I love that show.
That was so much fun. I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of different people. I think I'm kind of like a person who lives in I try to be in the moment. And there was such a succession, and all of that time span was around the time I became a mom. So, like being all the women in here who are mothers who work, right? It's challenging. And so, in some ways, it was a bit of a blur.
Yeah.
It was super fun, working when I started doing, like, now I have the opportunity, because I turned stuff down that would take me away from my kids.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely put some brakes on my career when my kids were little, because I had a lot of friends who I watched their careers and they weren't able to be there for, like, I wanted to be there for Halloween. I wanted to be there for every show that they put on at school, and and I know that there were choices that I made where if I was willing to go and live in Vancouver and not be around my kids. The one time that I did a series, or I did a pilot that was going to be shooting in South Africa. And I was like, oh, man, South Africa. Like, we could all go live there. And it took place on a farm, and their version of farm, and our version is very different. Our farm had lions, not tigers, lions, giraffe, warthogs, hippos, elephants. I mean, it was a cool farm.
That's
so that was the one where I was like, I'm taking the whole family with me, and consequently, it doesn't get picked up. And that was funny because after Bryan did Breaking Bad, and I was just coming back from South Africa, we were talking about the shows that we had just been working on, and his was going to be shooting in Albuquerque, and he was like, I just did this pilot. I'm like a teacher, a chemistry teacher who's making meth, and I don't know, I don't think there's an audience for it. And his wife was like, I hope not, because that shoots in Albuquerque. Cut to. They're gone. So, but also, it was tough. It's tough to be away from your family.
Yeah.
And so I made a few choices that kept me closer.
Let me rephrase that question then.
Yeah.
Who were some of the your favorite people to work with during that whole period when you were doing all of those different shows? Because you had them in such a variety
There were
of
so
other
many
actors.
people. One of the people who I really loved is Tyne Daly. I worked with her on Judging Amy, and Tyne Daly was like, the only way I can describe working with her, and I've wanted to do that ever since. Like when I've been at it for so long now that, especially when I'm working with young people, you know, being an actor is really challenging because you're just sort of thrown into the stew and it's like, go! And you have to be vulnerable and you have to know your lines and you have to know all this technical stuff and be relaxed and in the moment and all these kinds of things. And it's challenging. It's part of the journey of becoming an actor is that it's going to be incredibly awkward while you're doing it. Like for me, when I was doing Ninja Turtles, it was really tough because I didn't feel like my work was where I wanted it to be and I was still learning so much. So when I was working with Tyne, she just was, it was kind of like working with a swan who opened up her wing and then pulled me in to her. And I'll never forget it. And Debbie Reynolds was similar.
Yeah.
Like I worked with her in Halloween Town, and Helen Mirren was like that. I did Hitchcock with her, and there are certain people, and I loved like working with George Clooney. We did a pilot together, and I loved, who were some of the people who I really loved? I mean, there were a lot. One of the things that I didn't love was I love actors, and actors can be incredibly insecure and hard on themselves, and sometimes forget that we're all in it together, and that sharing is caring, and that you want to extend yourself to other people because it makes everything better. So there were times when I was coming up where I think people could have been more helpful, and you're just sort of stumbling around. Actually, Angela Lansbury was somebody who was incredibly amazing. And so as I got my footing under me, and so when I'm around younger actors or people who are starting out, it's really fun for me to remember to extend my wing like Tyne did and bring them in, and it's one of my joys.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it really is, because it's a tough business.
You mentioned Halloween Town.
Yeah.
I got to ask a Halloween Town question because I know that Mackenzie, our ASL interpreter here, is a huge fan of Halloween Town. So I'm going to ask a question for her because she's busy signing. I'm going to keep talking okay. So I'm messing with her. All right. She wanted to know, how difficult was it when they changed actors for Marnie?
Oh, it was hard.
Yeah.
You know, she had a moment like I did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with Ninja Turtles, like it's gonna go away. And you know, I don't know exactly what happened. I have my thoughts about it. I think she doesn't know exactly what happened. I saw the writing on the wall that it could potentially happen if everybody doesn't just start closing deals soon. And it was challenging because she was such an important part of the film, but we had this new person who was, you know, Sarah has blonde hair, she dyed it brown, she had to like jump into these shoes in this beloved series, and so I wanted to do whatever I could to make sure that she felt loved and that we were with her and that there's no hard feelings here, and what can we do to help you. It's just a different film because Kimberly, they're two different actors. They have two different, very different vibes, and I think if we ever came back and did another one, because there's every now and again talk happens, that I do think it would be Kimberly who would come back, and I know that she would be willing to come back.
Yeah.
So, but the whole story would be so different.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Halloween Town in general. How did you get? I mean, that was
Oh,
probably
well,
one of your
I
first.
got Halloween Town because of Ninja Turtles. So the
Gotcha.
head of Disney Channel,
Uh-huh.
I remember meeting him, and he just went on about his son and who loved Ninja Turtles, and we love you in their house, and we see you all the time, and I got offered the job, and first I was like, the Disney Channel was new, and so I was like, Disney Channel? I don't know, like, but then they said Debbie Reynolds is doing it, and I was like, oh, well, Debbie Reynolds is doing it, well, I'd do anything. And the very first time I met her was on set, and she kind of breezes in and says, hello, I'm Princess Leia's mother. And I was like, smack that, you're Debbie Reynolds. And she was a legend, and I learned so much from her, and she would teach me stuff that Betty Davis taught her. And so it was like, she was the tail end of the Hollywood star system. And I would just like, I'd sit at her feet and listen. And I loved her. And she was the one who taught me about connecting with fans. Because Debbie would travel with a stack of pictures for autographs, which I never did, and never would occur to me to do that. And everywhere we went, people would stop her and she'd take a picture with them and, you know, talk to them and chat with them. I remember getting from her trailer to set could take a while because she was going to stop and talk and pose for pictures, and I was teasing her one day because I loved her to death. If I love you, I will tease you mercilessly. And I was like, Debbie, you would pose with a coat hanger. And she was like, Judith, you must remember, you are nothing without your fans. You have a career because of your fans. Never forget that, or you will not have a career. And I was like, yes, Mom. Absolutely. You're right. And then I would do it to the kids. I was like, whoop. Because there were times that they were being kids, and sometimes kids, Hollywood kids, get a little spoiled. No. And so, right? And so you have to kind of take them in hand. And so I would, and I think it's why the kids and I get along so well, and they're not kids anymore, but there'd be times where I would act like Mom, and I would settle them down and make them listen and tell them, like, if they were being a little unkind to whomever, because they were feeling we're stars of a movie, I would just smack them down. And it's like, no, you're not. Go apologize. Because they're kids. You know, so. Because Debbie told me. I was like, those are your fans. Now you be nice.
What an opportunity to work with someone like that.
Oh, I loved it.
Not just work and learn and have her a mentor type role for you.
Yeah, and she was amazing. And my only regret is that I didn't spend more time with her, because I think I was a little in awe of her, and I didn't find out till after the films that she wished that, like, we had brought her in more, and I was sort of like, be respectful of Debbie's space. Right. And I should have just grabbed her and said, come on, we're coming to dinner. Yeah. You're coming to dinner every night. Yeah, that's the only regret.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah. So that was probably one of your first major recurring roles, right?
What?
Halloween Town?
Oh, no, because we were all, well, the way Halloween Town worked is it was just one movie.
Right.
It was a standalone.
Right.
And then they...
So it was one of the series of films.
It was films, right. Yeah. So then it became, then it was a sequel. Right. And then they did another one. It was like, oh, it's a trilogy. And then they did the fourth one. It was like, this is a franchise. And then they never did another one. I was like, but I think my first recurring role that for me was just beyond exciting was on Big Love. Big Love. I came in at the end of season 1.
Right.
And having Ellen Burstyn play my mom and working with Bill Paxton.
Bill, right.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yummy, delicious. But he used to say, Hoagie! And there were not enough words for how much I loved him. Yeah. So it was really sad. We've had way too many people.
Yeah, he's greatly missed by all the fans.
Yeah,
very sad.
I know.
That show was an incredible show. It really critically, won all kinds of awards, right? And such a difficult subject matter to get, right? Polygamy, right? And having
polygamy, and they really figured out how to tell that story. Right, and then Gene Triplehorn and I would sit on set with these. You know how they made books for dummies, and we both had Mormonism for Dummies. Right. And we were learning about it, and there was a scene that we had to shoot in a temple which had never been shot before, and we were trying to be very, nobody was trying to make fun of Mormons or, the fundamental Mormons who are still practicing polygamists. And that was never the intention. It was a story that this happened to be a part of the story. But there's this temple ceremony that happens that had never been shot before, which we were pariahs for shooting it. But you wear a very interesting costume. And Ellen Burstyn could not hold it together. She would just dissolve in laughter, and I was like, Ellen, and Jean had to like cry, and Ellen and I couldn't look at each other because we'd start to laugh, and at a certain point I was like, look, you're an Oscar winner. We're looking to you to lead us, and you are falling apart. Come on. I loved her. Yeah, that was a great show.
Yeah.
And working with Sissy Spacek was just like,
Sissy Spacek. Harry Dean Stanton was on
Harry
the show.
Dean Stanton. I mean, there were so many great people. Jennifer Goodwin, Chloe Sevigny. I mean, just so many.
Yeah,
So
it
many
really is
people.
amazing though how they did walk that tightrope.
Yeah.
Because it could have gone either
Yeah.
way, making fun of it or being
And
too
they had the
critical.
best
or
parties,
whatever.
HBO.
Oh, yeah.
My gosh, HBO. But the last series that I just recurred on was The Magicians
Yes.
for sci-fi.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's talk
And
about
that is such a fun show. I was just a horrible mother.
Yeah.
There was just, bring your boyfriend home and I'll try to make out with him. And I have a little drinking problem and my magic, and I can do magic. We did sex magic.
Nice, right. Mhm.
And so you meet us at an orgy at our house. And it's like this Roman orgy, and there's animals and stuff, and it was so much fun. And they just kept writing these. I only would do one episode a season. They had very short seasons, and but every time it was like they wrote me this meal of deliciousness. I
that's good.
just had so much fun.
That's a fun show.
Yeah.
Well, I think we got a couple of questions from the audience. Let's jump out here.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
So, what is your favorite line in the Halloween Town?
Say that one more time. It's hard with a mask. There you go.
Yeah, what is your favorite line in the Halloween Town?
What's my favorite line?
Favorite line.
Oh, and can you do a spell?
I can't do a spell. If Kim was here, she could do a spell. But I think my favorite line that was not my line, it was Debbie's line, was being normal is vastly overrated. Yeah. And we would get together and do, we did a dedication for Debbie a couple of years ago back in St. Helens, Oregon, where we shot the film. And we put a plaque up downtown, and we lit the pumpkin, and we had to do this spell, and they all knew the spell. I was like, where was I? I don't remember this spell at all. We're on stage, and they're doing the spell. I'm known as the person who will sing loudly to every song, but I don't know the words. So I'll be like, hey yeah, ma, hey yeah, I don't really know the words, I know the chorus. So I was just like, yeah, yes, and flan, and I just look close at the video. I'm just like, no, not even close. So yeah, no spell.
So, if there was one character, one role in film, TV, video games even, like that you want to do, that you think you could do, what is it?
Oh, that's a tough one. Put me in a Lord of the Rings movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I just like magical, fantastical movies in exotic locations. So, I would say something in that genre world. If they're gonna remake something,
Amazon, if you're watching,
There you go.
Amazon's doing a Lord of the Rings series, right?
wow, I never think in those terms. So it's gonna pop in, there's something that's gonna pop in my head. So before we leave, I'm gonna go, oh, that, blah, blah. What's your name?
Nick.
Nick. I'll say, hey, Nick, is your mama? That thing, right. It'll come to me.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks.
I have two questions actually.
What's your name?
Brandon.
Hi, Brandon.
What was it like on set on the Ninja Turtles, and what was your favorite part of the movie?
It was on set. It was hot as hell. We were shooting in Wilmington, North Carolina, where it's steamy hot on a sound stage. Someone let the crickets in, so there was always crickets. Oh my God. And it was hot, and so the poor guys in the turtle suits, Leif Tilden, Michelin Sisti, Josh Peiss, and David Foreman, literally were melting down. They would lose about 9 pounds a day in just liquid, and they'd have to like drink and get going again. And I think my favorite day, and there were many, but the day that sticks out for me is when they've rescued me, they bring me down to the sewer, and I wake up and there's Splinter. And it was the first day that I was working with Splinter, which was thrilling because it was Kevin Clash, who did Elmo. Jim Henson was there visiting. So I remember being on the back of the couch, and I come up and I'm like, ah! And out of the corner of my eye, so people aren't supposed to be in your sight line. Your sight line is if you're looking up, it's just, there's nobody there who's a crew member, except there's Jim Henson. So in my mind, I'm starting to scream, and I'm going, Jim Henson's here. Jim Henson's here. Oh my God, Jim. It's like, you're in a movie. What are you doing? It's like, be back on the couch. Like, look, there's the rat. Oh, that's Kevin Klatt. You know, it was like, so.
It's a wall hay baby, right?
Right, it was kind of crazy. So that was fun. And my favorite scenes, I think, were in the farmhouse with Elias and the turtles, because we had just so much fun. And I loved playing with Elias a lot. But there were so many fun, we were exhausted. We worked 6 days a week, like, I think my longest day was 18 hours.
Wow.
So it was, come Saturday night, we were exhausted. And we did that for 8 or 10 weeks or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Did I answer them both?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
Hello.
What's your name?
Bradley.
Hi, Bradley.
What was it like on set with the Foot Clan soldiers?
It was, so the first time I was with them, I think was in when we crashed through they're fighting up above us, and they crashed through into my shop. And there was just a lot of people and bodies. And so we had a bunch of the stuntmen from China who were like these incredible martial artists, just incredible. So it was really fun to be around them and watch what they did. And I was really happy when I had the scene at the end where I sort of got to be in the fight a little bit, but I was never really around a lot of that stuff. We had a first unit and a second unit shooting simultaneously. So Brian Henson, who's Jim Henson's son, was the second unit director. So he would go, and we had both units shooting simultaneously. So I would start the day with first unit, which is called principal photography, and then I'd move into second unit, which was all the stunt stuff. And that's when you would get into I'd go over there about my 14th hour and spend another 3 or 4 hours. Yeah. So it's a good thing I was a young girl. Because it was exhausting.
Cool, thanks.
Hi. Pizza Planet. What's your name?
Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. If you had one piece of advice for young actors, what would it be?
I would say be pathologically positive, because it's really challenging. I went to a boarding school for performing arts because I could not cut it at my regular school because I just wouldn't go. There was a theater company that I was a part of, and instead of going to school, I would go to the theater. It was all adults. I was the only kid, and I would just cut school. So I ended up, my mom was like, we've got to get you through school, go to performing arts school. So I was the first alumni who ever gave the commencement speech at the school. years later, which was quite astonishing because they kicked my butt out of that school because I was bad. And my whole speech was, or my commencement address was about breaking the rules, because I've never been a rule follower, and about the thing I had to cultivate was a belief in myself and in possibility that was so strong, it didn't matter how many no's I got. So, and you get a lot. It doesn't mean you don't, and this was the tough part, because instead of like feeling the rejection, I would just kind of put it over here. And you have to feel, it's hard, it's a hard business. It will chew you up and spit you out unless you have resources of well-being that you are baking into yourself. No one will take care of you. You have to take care of yourself. So you've got to build in these resources of belief, of self-worth, of well-being, of nurturing yourself, and I think that comes from a positive attitude. And there will be so many people who tell you you can't, and it's not possible, and all of that, and you just have to keep, you just have to keep getting back up, and believing in the unseen and the unbelievable.
Also, how did you get into acting? Like, was it something you always wanted to do, or did like one
I
day
always
you kind of
wanted
went
to do it, and then, so I did theater. Like when I was in elementary school, I had a really great music teacher who used to do productions around me, which I was really lucky about. Then when I got to high school, I just kept doing it, and was lucky enough to go to performing arts high school where I got to do it, and then I jumped right into my career. I didn't go to college. I went right into my career and then moved to New York, and I had such a belief in what I was going to do that I never considered that I would fail. Actually, I thought about that later.
How many no's did you get before you got a yes?
A ton.
We're starting to run out of time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
A
it's okay.
ton. A ton.
A ton.
Come to
Let's
my
get-
table and say hi.
Yes, come.
We'll
Listen,
continue.
we're almost out of time. If you can do it real
Sorry.
quick, do it fast.
Hi, bud.
Hi, so big Turtles fan. And
What's your name?
Lucas.
Hey, Lucas.
Hi, and I just wanted to ask, when shooting on set, did you have a favorite turtle? And has that changed over time? Why or why not?
I didn't, because each guy was really cool, and it was just like a different relationship with each of them. Leif Tilden is hilarious. If you ever see him at a Comic-Con, he will make you laugh so hard. He's so irreverent, and he still sends me just hilarious Instagram messages. Josh Pais is an incredible actor, and I have actually studied with him because he teaches something called Committed Impulse, and I really love him. He's the more serious of all the actors. Michelin Sisti is hilarious, and he became a puppeteer for the Henson Company, and I did a cast and crew reunion on YouTube, and it's a channel that I started, and I started a second one, and it's called TMNT Movie 1990, and you'll get to see Michelin in all his glory. He's so funny. And then David Foreman is a British stuntman who became one of the Turtles, and he was just so lovely and so different. So I love them all.
Well, on that note, listen, you can go back to Judith's table. You
Yeah,
can
feel
questions
free, ask
there.
questions.
Come back there, please interact with her.
Yeah.
Everybody, let's
Thank you
give
guys
a
for
great
showing up.
round of applause for Judith.
Cowabunga.
Thank you, Cowabunga. Dude, I like your hat, man. Where'd you get the hat?
Amazon.
It's so cool. It's so cool. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
So
everybody.
much. You guys are adorable.
Stay safe.
I know. Get me talking.
Absolutely. Thank you. You are very cool. Thank you.
Hey, Jeff, it was a pleasure. You guys were, I was watching.
Stay safe.
Hi, Ron.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, doll.